Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium on Thursday, May 30th, 2024. We are already through the month of May, about halfway through the year already. Just a reminder, there's no vid chat tomorrow. I do have the schedule up for the vid chats, including the new evening vid chat through the end of the summer, but please remember that you need to check the schedule. We are again having bad weather. We're supposed to have more today. I'm trying to sneak this news and views in before the next cycle of storms hits. We really need a break. We've had several tornadoes in this state. In Texas, Houston still without power. It's really, really bad, folks. All right, today I want to talk about the helicopter crash that killed the Iranian president, Ebrahim Raisi. The interesting thing about this story to me is to place it in the context of this wider covert war that I've been arguing for many, many years would eventually break out. I think it has broken out. The reason that I think it's broken out, whereas before I was merely arguing that it might break out, is because the statements of the Russian leadership, in particular of Dmitry Medvedev, seem to indicate that yes, after serving the West many warnings that if you keep trying all these covert operations on us, we're going to respond in kind. And they certainly have been sending those messages with increasing frequency and with increasing rhetorical force for the last few months. So I think those covert wars are underway. That is the context in which I think we have to view a lot of these stories. I just did a blog on the website about the alleged Raytheon fire, which again I think is a suspicious story if it's viewed in its own right, but when it's placed in this wider context, then I think we have to be suspicious about every reported story and watch what's happening with a skeptical eye. So that brings me to the recent report that has apparently already been published and released by the Iranian government concerning this helicopter crash. It's quite a lengthy article. It is by John Helmer. The article is titled Iran Incident Persian Push, Evidence that President Raisi and Foreign Minister AMIR-ABDOLLAHIAN were murdered. And there are several paragraphs in this article I want to read before I get to some of my questions that appear to be raised by this article. So I begin with the first 4 paragraphs in this article. Quote, the release of fresh details of the fatal helicopter flight on May 19th, which killed Iran's President Ebrahim Raisi and Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian, is ruling out bad weather, machine failure, signals interference, onboard bomb or ground-fired missile as the cause of the crash. Iranian civilian, military, and clerical officials are also excluding Israeli or U.S. involvement. And that, to me, folks, is an important statement in this article. It's an important statement coming out of Tehran. I want to address that when we get to the very end, and I give you my high-octane speculation about what might be going on. Instead, Raisi's chief of staff, Gholam Hossein Esmaili, a civilian lawyer and Raisi loyalist for many years, has described a sequence of details preceding and following the incident which hint at suicide murder by one of the pilots of the presidential aircraft. Esmaili made his remarks on Tehran television on the evening of May 21st. He revealed that Raisi's helicopter was flying second in a convoy of 3 aircraft, while Esmaili was flying third behind Raisi when his helicopter suddenly disappeared. The pilot of the third helicopter then decided to circle and return to search for the president's helicopter. Ismaili also said that attempted calls to Raisi, AMIR-ABDOLLAHIAN, and the pilot of their aircraft, and pardon me, folks, for those of you who speak Farsi, please forgive my terrible pronunciations. And the pilot of their aircraft, Colonel Sayed Tahir Mostafavi, all failed to produce a response. However, 2 calls were answered by Ayatollah Muhammad Ali al-Hashim, the only passenger who appeared to survive the impact and fire of the crash, but died soon after. Al-Hashim represents the clerical power in East Azerbaijan province. According to Ismaili, Al-Hashim said, "Our situation is not good. The copter has crashed into the valley," unquote. Now I'm skipping a couple of paragraphs here. Quote, "The implication is also that there were no sudden machine failures triggering the loss of pilot control and indicated either by the pilot or automatic instrument distress signals. Because the Raisi aircraft disappeared into clouds ahead of Ismaili and there was no heat burst from missiles or bomb strikes, satellite images by Russian, U.S., or Chinese satellites are unlikely to have recorded what happened. The signals intelligence collected by Russia and the United States is also unlikely to have recorded more than Ismaili has admitted. That leaves the Russian hint published by Konstantin Malofeyev, owner and editor-in-chief of Tsargrad, citing a retired Russian Air Force general. According to Major General Vladimir Popov, quote, "The main threat to top officials during air travel comes from themselves," unquote. Ismaili's statement points to Raisi's pilot making the decision to crash, comments a Western military source. Why order the 2 aircraft to ascend and get above the clouds and then not do so himself? The chief pilot of the presidential aircraft was Colonel Sayed Tahir Mostafavi. His co-pilot was Colonel Moshe Daryanush, and their chief mechanic was Behruz Gadimi. Now, I'm skipping, again, several paragraphs and going more or less right toward the end of this article for 2 final paragraphs that I think are also highly significant. Quote, "The warning at the end of the General Staff report," this is talking about the Iranian Army General Staff's report, "the warning at the end of the General Staff's report has been ignored by the oppositionist Iranian media organization, Iran International TV, which is hinting that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps plotted to kill the president. Iran International is an anti-clerical, anti-regime publication based in London and Washington and reportedly financed by Saudi Arabia. In its report, Iran International claims, quote, that the president's bodyguard," listen to this, folks, "was notably absent from the ill-fated helicopter. The latest images of Ebrahim Raisi show his bodyguard was almost always at his side. However, the released list of casualties reveal that he was not on board. Given that the Bell 212 helicopter can accommodate 15 passengers but only had 8 on board, the question arises, why did Ebrahim Raisi's personal bodyguard continue the journey in a different helicopter? Javrab Merabi, the bodyguard of Iran's president, continued the journey in one of the other 2 helicopters accompanying the president." So notice that apparently some of Raisi's security, personal security, was stripped from him prior to them setting off in these helicopters. And to me, that's a very telltale sign. However, there's a problem with the security stripping here. If you're planning to kill somebody by a suicide, if you're a part of the flight crew, by a suicide murder, by crashing a helicopter into the ground, then it's rather pointless to strip the security, unless, of course, that security may have been in on whatever plot is there. So, in other words, this is our first suspicious detail. But the other suspicious detail here is apparently there is agreement that this was a deliberate act. So then the question becomes, why even bother to mention the Revolutionary Guard and all of this to begin with? And I suspect it's because, like everybody else, everyone is suspecting that somebody is involved in this crash. That if it's a murder-suicide, that there has to be somebody behind it, some faction that wanted to take Raisi out. The question is who? So let's go back to that initial statement about the United States and Israel being ruled out in the Iranian report. I have to take that with a bit of a grain of salt. Because if you recall back when Iran launched all those missiles against Israel in response for Israel bombing a headquarters and an Iranian general in Syria, the Iranian government looks to me like they are trying to avoid an escalation. So the last thing that you want to do is to announce to your public that its president was taken out by an Israeli or American or possibly a covert operation involving both. You would never admit that. So in spite of the fact that the Iranian General Staff is not willing to finger any blame or assign any blame or responsibility to Israel or the United States, I think we have to be at least moderately skeptical of the political circumstances in which they have to come out with some sort of verdict on what happened. The problem here, as far as I can see it, is that the pilot who crashed the helicopter may have been acting more or less as a kind of mind-controlled suicide bomber. In other words, I spent a great deal of time in one of my books called Microcosm and Medium arguing that one of the favored methods of creating super soldiers or assassins is to mind manipulate them. And I pointed out the case of Sirhan. Sirhan, alleged murderer of Robert Kennedy Sr., in fact criminally convicted for it, that he shows all the signs of having been mind manipulated into his performance in whatever role he had during that assassination. I've pointed out similar techniques were probably in use with Jim Jones and the whole cult down in Guyana during the Carter administration. So something is going on here, and I don't rule out an internal opposition to the Tehran government within Iran itself, because many people are aware that the Iranian population is quite divided as to the popularity of the regime which currently controls it. So there is a large opposition to this clerical regime. So I have to look at this whole thing as part of this ongoing covert war. The question really is, why would anyone try to remove a significant portion of the current regime in Tehran during such a geopolitically hot year, and particularly in that region of the world? I think we can safely discount any Russian or Indian or Chinese involvement, because what they most want in that part of the world is stability. Stability for their own trade, for their own economies, and so on and so forth. So I doubt any of them would have sponsored such an act, particularly against an ally like Iran. So I think we're looking either at internal opposition or the possibility still, in spite of the official Iranian report, that there may be some American or Israeli or possibly even European involvement in whatever has happened here. It's a story we'll have to pay attention to, but I do think in the context of all of these warnings I've been making for years and years now about covert operations and watching them gradually tick up in their frequency and occurrence and violence, I think we're well on the way. So if you're looking for the beginning of World War II, that's my sad way of telling you that it's already begun. So this is a story we'll have to keep looking into, along with many of the others I've been talking and blogging about in the last few weeks, and for that matter in the last few years, because I think we're beginning to see all of this come home to roost. Dmitry Medvedev's warnings have to be taken very, very seriously indeed. So that's it. Don't forget, tomorrow there is no vid chat. Don't forget, please check the schedule to stay abreast of the vid chats and any changes of schedule. I do apologize again that this has been such a massively lousy year for weather and constant weather interruptions of our routine, but I fear that probably it's not going to get any better until they quit playing with the weather, which of course they're not going to do. So anyway, that's it, folks, for today's news and views from the Nefarium. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you on the flip side. Bye-bye, and God bless.